Hello and welcome to Take Time. I am your host Patrick Marlette, and let's continue our conversation on the SNE. Now, if you haven't watched it already, I did a video comparison of the SNE499 and how it stacks up to the Marine Master 300, so if you'd like to see that, there should be a card on the screen now. I do recommend watching that video before we go into this review. So the SNE499 is one of many Tuna offerings from Seiko as of recently. It has a 46.5mm diameter with a 12mm thickness, a 22mm lug width, and utilizes the caliber 157 solar powered movement. That movement has a tolerance of plus or minus 15 seconds a month with a 10-month power reserve when the battery is fully charged, and has all of the niceties you'd expect from a modern wristwatch. So how's it held up in day-to-day use? However, with all my reviews here on the channel, I like to start with the bad and then move on to the good before giving my final verdict on the Tuna, and there is a lot by way of bad. So let's jump into it. Yep, it would not be a Seiko if it did not have some form of misalignment. And I'm gonna just put this on the screen for a few seconds. Can you tell what's misaligned on my SNE499? If you guessed the bezel insert, then you would be correct. It is just slightly right aligned. As you can tell, it's just off and to the right ever so slightly. It does not line up with the red marker at 12, nor does it match the triangle at 12 o'clock. Seiko. I love you guys so much. You're just so bad at aligning all of the elements of your watch. Now, people are calling these quirks, and you know what? It's just a fun little quirk, having one of your elements misaligned. It wouldn't be a Seiko otherwise. But while we're looking at that bezel insert, I want to talk about another negative note I had about this watch, and that is how the Pepsi coloration is executed on the insert. If you'll notice right above the 12, you have a continuation of the blue all the way to meet the red. It is at this weird off angle. Over by the 3 o'clock, we have a straight cut of red into blue, and what normally happens with a Seiko Pepsi diver is that that triangle is large enough to cover the entire space between the top and bottom of the bezel insert. However, here it doesn't. And when it doesn't, you'll normally see the red cut halfway through that triangle and meet the blue. Instead, we have, again, this weird angle of red scooping up, and I just don't like that. I would have preferred that the red coloration continued halfway through to meet the blue in that triangle. Now, of course, this is a matter of personal taste, but I think it would have looked better if the red met the blue coloration on the bezel insert halfway through. I just think this looks bad. I love that they went back to the old dial and handset aesthetic of the Tuna series here. I wish they carried over the domed Hardlex crystal of that same series of watches. If you watch my previous video, you'll know what I'm talking about, but my SBBN 015 has a gorgeous domed Hardlex crystal that works so well in livening up the dial. Instead, we have a flat, recessed crystal, which I'm sure most will appreciate as it stays out of harm's way more easily in this form, but I prefer the aesthetic of the domed crystal. Again, we can chalk this one up to personal taste, but if you've seen the domed Hardlex crystal of a Seiko Tuna, it is a sight to behold. Now, I'm going to move the handset for this next bad note, but you can tell by looking at the dial, there's just a few issues I'm having with the text alignment. The text spacing on this model just looks off to me. The patty text hovering above the Solar Divers text stood out immediately when I first saw this. I'd like to see that come closer to the bottom text and not hovering by itself. And the X logo could tighten up as well. As a matter of fact, how about just a little less text in general so we can take in this gorgeous wave dial? But I get we can't go without a few of those distinctions on the dial. I would have preferred to see less text, but since we're adding the patty text, can we bring it in just a little bit tighter to the rest of those bars at the bottom? It's just taking up too much real estate. Now, with tool watches, I prefer the brush to polish ratio to be in favor of brushed. The case back here is entirely polished, and having nearly lived its entire life on this rubber strap, has somehow managed to pick up little hairline scratches already. I would have much preferred a brushed Seiko caseback like you see on a lot of their tool watches. Now, I know this won't affect a lot of you, but I care about the condition of my watches when I get them new, and I like to maintain that state of newness as long as possible. And seeing all these hairline scratches on the back drives me up the wall. You know, it's not something you see day to day, but I can't imagine what's happening to cause those, and I'm reminded of the fact that they're there every time I go to put this on my wrist. Thank goodness the rest of this watch is covered in that plastic shroud. And on that note, I've got nothing else but good things to say about this watch. And there are so many good things. Where do I start? A plus rubber strap right here. At sub $400, this is the rubber strap you want. This is one of the better rubber straps on the market. You know, I placed this on an alternative strap for about a day and went straight back to this rubber model. It's incredible. It wears perfectly day to day, and it looks amazing with this patty option. The dark blue rubber strap matches perfectly with the shroud. It's a made to match option. You probably want to keep it on this strap. Now, the dial face on this watch is everything. I think this is the better looking of the three models available for this watch. I'll talk about the SNE499 in a second, but this dial face is absolutely gorgeous. This is how a Tuna should look. As a matter of fact, the double wave pattern on the dial is just extremely attractive, and it still maintains that tool-like physique with that hunk of a shroud on the outside. And beyond that gorgeous double wave pattern on the dial, this old Tuna dial face is amongst the most attractive tool watch dials Seiko has ever created, if not the most appealing in my opinion. I am happy to see it return, and with the perfect relocation of that simple date wheel and window at the 4 o'clock position, without some hideous half or third or quarter loom plot next to it. It's just the window with a black date wheel in the background. It looks perfect. I'm so glad to see this got the full patty treatment, and of all the patty models up to date, this is the best alternative patty option to your regular series of Prospex divers from the brand. It is definitely the best executed patty design to date. Also, I always get a ton of people asking if the Seiko Tuna is right for their wrist size. I think if you have a 6.5-inch wrist, you'll get by just fine with either the Marine Master Tuna, and especially this model with its more inviting 12mm profile. I think this is going to encourage a lot more people to try out the Tuna series, as it's one of the best diver varieties from the brand. Gang, this watch wears extremely well. If you wanted to try out a Tuna, this is a fantastic way to go. Now, before I give you my final verdict on this watch, of course, I'm going to provide you all with a wrist shot of this piece on my wrist. Again, it's 46.5 millimeters in total diameter, and I have a 7.25-inch wrist to give you an impression of what this might look like for all of your admirers. Here is the SNE499 on my wrist, and again, this strap is heaven. And when you're going to admire it, it's going to look a little something like this. And as you'd expect, it covers up a lot of the wrist, but by no means does it feel too cumbersome. It is one of the better wearing watches I own currently, and this is compared to a variety of different Seikos, to include, again, that SBBN015. Now, the SBBN in this actually wear quite the same, but the actual Marine Master Tunas are just a little bit heavier. So if you wanted a tool watch that's just as rugged and lighter, this is a fantastic choice. This watch is a really good buy. If you want to get that old Seiko Tuna aesthetic and a modern package with a solar movement, a very dependable solar movement, this is a good route to go, especially at that $400 price range. Also, as I mentioned in my first video regarding this watch, someone brought to my attention the SNE499 with bracelet, all black with bracelet. A bracelet, might I add, that looks very similar to the Marine Master 300s. And wouldn't you know it, I was right. They were gonna make another one with a bracelet. I had no idea, although my guess was they would make 7 copies, 3 with a bracelet. Let's see how far I'm off. And if these get much more popular, I'm sure my guess won't be too far off. This is a return to form for the Tuna series and very much welcome by Seiko enthusiasts like myself. Now, if you found this video enlightening or in the least entertaining, feel free to hit that like button. It looks a little something like this. If you have friends, forums, or groups that were interested in picking up a Seiko Tuna diver, don't settle for anything less than this. Don't buy a digital tuna. Don't buy one of those baby tuna monster things. If you can afford a Marine Master, I will always recommend getting Marine Master. Ideally, the previous generation of SBBNs, the 013, 15, or 17, or even further back, the SBBN 007. Those are great value for money. If you can find them under $1,000 now, they're only going to go up. If they continue with their current Seiko tuna design of their main series of tunas, trust me, those will only go up. But if you wanted to share this video with a friend who was looking for a great alternative to the Marine Master tunas, share this with them, let them know to buy it. It's a good watch. Also, if you're new to the channel, well then welcome. I do videos like this 2 or more times a week, so if you're interested in watch content, feel free to hit that subscribe button. And if you'd like to see my videos precisely when they air, you can hit the bell icon just next to that. Again, my name is Patrick Marlatt, and thank you for the time.